video. We are now in the process of explaining properties of convolution and identification of system properties from impulse response. This is the second video presentation for today. In the first video, we already saw what are the properties of convolution are, and continuing on the same, in this presentation, let us see what system properties we can identify from impulse response representation of a system. We already know that impulse response representation becomes useful when a system obeys two of the properties, linearity and time invariance. Therefore, we assume that the system in our hand obeys both these properties so that we can represent this system by using impulse response. Now, remaining three properties a system normally has, that is memory, the causality and stability, can be now determined by impulse response what we have for the system. And let us see each of those properties one by one, and let us see for a given system impulse response how to identify whether the system is memory, whether the system is causal or non-causal, or the system is stable or unstable in the discussion to follow. After that, let us finally conclude by discussing one more concept, that is unit step response, that is identifying unit step response for a given LTI system once its impulse response is known. That is by using impulse response how to determine the unit step response, because unit impulse and unit step are the two basic signals normally used to test system analysis, system properties, etc. in engineering. So let us see all the four concepts in the discussion to follow. To start with, memoryless system, that is a property of the system that that system with the memory or memory without memory. How to identify whether system possesses memory or memoryless. Here when I say memory, it is not digital memory which is used to store the data. It is the inherent property of the system due to which it requires some past values to compute the present value of the system. So how to define a memoryless system? A system is memoryless if system doesn't have memory if output directly relates to input and there is no requirement of the past input to find the present value. Or you can state in another way, that is a system is said to be having memory if its output depends on past or future input values. Okay, how to identify whether the system is requiring future and past values to find the present output, so that system will have memory, or if it is memoryless? How to identify? So what we do is to start with the impulse response, as I said in the beginning, that impulse response h of t or h of n can be used to determine the memory property of a system. We'll illustrate this in the following demonstration, and in the end we'll conclude using a sentence how to define the property of memory property of the system for the given impulse response, whether continuous time or discrete time. Let us see some demonstrations now in the form of some input-output relationship. Start with the discrete system, and we'll take the system with the memory. How to describe a system with the memory when the system is discrete time in nature. Okay, now suppose a system is shown simply like an operator T. Suppose if I give the input as an unit impulse, unit impulse is a signal having only a single value at the origin and the magnitude is 1. So if I give this kind of input, if the response, which is called as impulse response, comes like this, suppose it comes like this, then this system has memory. Why? See, what I did here is I applied only one input at the origin, that's all. But output starts at origin with the value 2, then also continues. That is at n is equal to 1, it is 1. At n is equal to 2, it is maybe minus 1. So value is not marked, maybe minus 1. So I inputted only at the origin, but output continued for 2 more samples. Other than origin, there are 2 more samples. This continuation occurred because system had memory internally. If system didn't had any memory, then for the instantaneous input, there would have been instantaneous output at that instant itself. Because output extends beyond the origin, that means this system has memory. But that means, suppose if you see the output at instant 1, because at the output instant 1 the value is 1, but at that instant input has stopped. Input, there is no value at 1 because it appeared only at 0. At 1 and 2 etc. its value is 0, but here output appeared. See, at n is equal to 1 output is 1, at n is equal to 2 output may be -1, and after that it may be 0. But these two values appeared because of some inherent memory property of the system. Otherwise you would have had only one value at the origin. These two extra values that came after the first value shows that this system has memory. Suppose the same system didn't have memory. Suppose this system didn't have memory. What would have been its output? Exactly, a memoryless system would have been having output like this. That is, when I applied one impulse, there would have been there one impulse with amplitude 2. Maybe because of the amplifying effect, its value may increase, but only one value. That is, present output depends on present input, not on the past input. So here there is a direct relationship between input and output. So sample to sample, I applied the sample at n is equal to 0, and output occurred at n is equal to 0 that instant. Then after that it disappeared. Unlike this, see here two more values continued, because this here in this case system had memory, in this case system didn't had memory. That is, for a memoryless system, there is, for a impulse response, for one impulse there will be one impulse output. It may be 2, 5 or -1 whatever, but only at n is equal to 0, no other values. So this system doesn't have memory. Now how to define this using the statement? What I do is this: a system is said to be memoryless if h of n is equal to 0 for n not equal to 0. So this is the now guiding statement for us. For all our future discussion, for a memoryless system, we always, using impulse response, we always use this expression. That is, for any LTI system, if impulse response happens to be 0 for n other than 0, then this system is not having memory. If this condition not satisfied, the system is having memory. For example, in this case, h of n is not 0 for n not equal to 0, because n equal to 1 it is 1, at n equal to 2 it is -1. Therefore this condition not obeyed. Therefore this system is having memory. This system is memoryless. Likewise, if you want to test the continuous system, what you do is same thing. Suppose if this is a continuous time system, that is CT system, where input signal is continuous in time, output signal is continuous time. If I give the impulse input, then output will be like this. That is, for a memoryless CT system, an instantaneous input at the input results in instantaneous output. When I give an impulse at the input, output also is an impulse, another impulse, may be modified by the magnitude A. This A happens because of the characteristics of the system. That is okay, but it happens only at n is equal to 0. When I applied n is equal to 0, suppose if I had applied this impulse here, say at t is equal to 1 second, then there would have been output at t is equal to 1 second. Only at that instant there would have been output. At 1 second there would have been an output. That is A into delta t would have been the output. So because I applied the input at origin, here also output appears at origin, because this system doesn't have memory. It is a memoryless system, because output doesn't extend beyond the origin. Impulse response is not extending beyond the origin. Suppose if the same system had memory, how it would have behaved? See here, see the situation. So this is memoryless, therefore h of t is equal to 0 for t not equal to 0. See the symbol of not equal to. That means for all other values other than 0, the h of t is 0. If this is the case, the system is memoryless. That is, h of t is equal to 0 for t not equal to 0. Suppose if the system had memory, a continuous time system had the memory, how the input-output relation would have looked like? See, if I had an impulse at the input of a memory system, that is a continuous time system with the memory, the output might have been like this. I don't know why the output behaves like this, but output continues even beyond 0. See, for all this time, output it rises to 1 due to some effect of the input function. Whenever I apply an impulse, the impulse appears and it goes, but output rises to 1, then remains for some time. It goes on decreasing linearly with a negative slope, then becomes 0 at t is equal to t dash. Till this time output appears. That is because internally the system is memory system. This has property of memory. That's why output continues even when input disappears. Input disappears after t is equal to 0, but output doesn't disappear immediately. It remains for some time. That means this system has memory. That means the definition for a memory-less system, when the system is this h of t is equal to 0, t not equal to 0 is a memoryless system. If this condition is satisfied, if h of t is not equal to 0, if h of t is not equal to 0, for t not equal to 0, like this, for t not equal to 0, h of t not equal to 0, system has memory, system has memory. So this is a guiding line for finding the memory property of the system for all of the future discussions. So same thing has been summarized here. Hence, from the observations made above, we can conclude that a discrete time LTI system is memoryless only if its impulse response is h of n is equal to 0 for n not equal to 0. That is, a memoryless system will have impulse response 0 for all other values of n other than n equal to 0. Similarly, for a continuous time system, a system is memoryless if h of t is 0 for t other than 0. If t other than 0, the system is not 0, then system is having memory, or if this condition is satisfied, system is memoryless. Okay, I hope you understood how to find for a given impulse response. If the impulse response is given, you just test this condition, okay, either this or this, depending on which system is given to you. Just by testing these two equations on the given system of the, from the impulse response of the system, you can identify memory property of that system. Now let us go to property, that is causal property, that is how to identify a causal system. What is the definition of causality? Just go through the sentence. It is understandable. It is simply written. Output of a causal system depends only on the present or the past value of the input to the system, but never on the future values of the input. If at all output of the system also depends on the future value of the input, then the system is said to be anticipatory or non-causal. See, it is a special situation, as I told you in discussing much earlier classes, that any system that requires future input to find the present output, that is a strange kind of system, and those systems are anti-causal. Most of the systems we handle, and real-time system especially, are all causal systems because they never require future values. To find the present output, they require either present value only or present and the past values, but never on the future values. If any system requires future value of input to find the present output, then that can be only non-real-time system, and that non-real-time system will be normally non-causal or anticipatory. Now, given the impulse response, how to identify whether the system is causal or not? That is, whether it is discrete time system or continuous time system, depending on h of t or h of n, how to identify, determine causality property of the system. Again, let us use illustrations as we did for the memory property to understand the identification of causality from the given impulse response. As you can see in this, first let us discuss on discrete system, discrete causal system. So I am going to apply the impulse. So I am going to get the impulse response. Looking at the impulse response, I will tell whether the system is causal or not. Suppose if the impulse response happens to be like this. What happened here is I applied the impulse for this CT system. I am very sorry, there is a mistake here. This should have been CT, okay, continuous system, because T is a variable. No, I made a mistake. I'll write this continuous system, okay. CT, continuous system, CT. Continuous system. For this is not a discrete, it is continuous system. For this continuous system, if I give impulse, unit impulse, that is amplitude at the strength 1, then output starts at t is equal to 0 and then remains non-zero till some value. It's exponentially falling. See, applied, the important thing you have to note here is I applied the impulse at t is equal to 0, but output started only at t is equal to 0, not before that. Suppose if the output starts before that, before I apply the impulse, output starts. Suppose a system output is like that. We don't know why it is like that, but it is like that. Maybe because of initial condition value. System output starts well before the input. I apply impulse at t is equal to 0, but output starts at t is equal to -1. Suppose, then that system is anti-causal. That is, suppose, yeah, once again this is a mistake. It is continuous, okay. CT system. I'm sorry, I made a mistake again while making slide. Please pardon me. So this is CT. In this CT system, actually definition holds good equally. Okay, whether CT or DT doesn't make any difference. Definition is same. Only notation is different. Signals types are different. Otherwise, the definition is same. Doesn't matter much. Okay. Once again, applying the impulse at t is equal to 0, and you can see output started well before 0. See, it started. It's anticipated. It anticipated that you are going to apply the input at is equal to 0. It started well before that. You don't ask me why, but this system input output relationship is like that. Output appears before the input. That means this system is non-causal. Whether this system is causal, non-anticipatory. This system is non-causal or anticipatory for a CT system. Similarly, same thing I'm showing here. If the impulse response starts at t is equal to 0, then after that it appears or disappears, doesn't matter, but starts at t is equal to 0, the system is causal. If the impulse response starts well before 0, much before 0, like this graph, output graph, impulse response graph, then this system is non-causal system. This is a causal system, this is a non-causal. Just because of this extra region that started before 0, it becomes anticipatory or non-causal. How to describe in the form of a statement? It is like this. See, just go through this. A CT system is causal if its impulse response is 0 for t less than 0. See, this condition I have formulated just to check for the given system. In future, in a problem, if they ask you to find causality property, then use this condition. Okay, if h of t is 0 for t less than 0. See, in this case, see, this is actually, these all line, no? These all line are t less than 0. T less than 0. For t less than 0, it is 0. See, so therefore, this is a causal system. A continuous time system is causal if its impulse response is h of t is equal to 0 for t less than 0. For t less than 0, it should be 0. Then it is a causal system. Whereas this condition is not satisfied here. Here, for t less than 0, that is for this much duration, no? See, for this much duration, h of t is not 0. Some values are there, no? Therefore, this is a non-causal system. This doesn't obey this property. It is not causal, it is non-causal. Similarly, for a discrete system, I didn't show the day. Actually, I showed by mistake. The notation I wrote was discrete, but they are continuous. That was my mistake. Otherwise, for a discrete system also, same definition holds good. A discrete time LTI system is causal if its impulse response h of n is equal to 0 for n less than 0. That is, if impulse response is 0 before n is equal to 0, then that system is causal system. If it is non-zero, then the system is anti-causal system. So much so, it is easy to identify if I look at the equation or at the graph of impulse response. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Now what I did is I took x of n convolution h of n. Then using commutative property of convolution, which I have discussed in the previous video, I can also write it as h of n convolution x of n. I am purposefully writing like this: h of n convolution h of n. Then I'll expand the formula within the modular sign. No, within the modular sign, I am expanding the formula. So h of n convolution h of n x of n is equal to mod of summation k ranging from minus infinity to plus infinity h of k into x of n minus k. This modulus anyway is there in the previous equation also, no? That is previous step also. Therefore, modulus continues. This is the expansion of, this much is the expansion of this h of n convolution x of n. So what I'm doing is, I'm rewriting the same expression. Now, what I'm doing is, see, now modulus of summation this product, isn't it? Now, if I take this summation outside the modulus, I want to take summation outside the modulus. When I take summation outside the modulus, the equality becomes greater than or equal to. Why it becomes like this? That is, modulus of y of n is equal to modulus of summation h of k into x of n minus k. If I take the magnitude outside, that is, you can see one sentence here. Since the magnitude of sum of set of numbers is smaller than sum of magnitudes of the numbers, that is, since the magnitude of the sum of a set of numbers is smaller than the sum of the magnitude of the number, that means Suppose you have a number -5, then -3, then 2, +2 and 1. Okay, now just add all these numbers and then take the magnitude. Okay, add all these numbers. See, -5 -3 becomes -8, -8 plus 2 becomes -6, -6 plus 1 becomes -6 plus 1 becomes -5, isn't it? -5. Then take the magnitude. Then take the magnitude. You'll get 5. If you take the magnitude of -5 is magnitude of -5 is 5. It's 5, isn't it? Okay. Now when you add all the numbers, then take the magnitude. That is like this. In this expression, you're adding all the numbers. You're adding all the numbers, then taking magnitude, isn't it? So this is, for example, if all these numbers are, there are 4 such products: -5, -3, 2 and 1. You add all the numbers -5, -3, 2 and 1 and take the magnitude. You'll get 5. Or as in this equation, you first take the magnitude, then add. See, in this what they're doing is sum of magnitude of the products, isn't it? That means you first take the magnitude, then add. That is, you take 5 magnitude. If you take magnitude of -5, it is 5. Then take -3, take its magnitude 3. Then bring it here 3, because mod of -3 is 3. Then mod of 2 is 2. Mod of 1 is 1. That is, I am taking magnitude before, that is as in this equation, taking magnitude before, that is -5 becomes 5, -3 becomes 3, 2 becomes 2, 1 becomes 1, then add. What I get if I add now? Before, if I take magnitude, then add, I get this as 11. Am I right? 11. That is 5 plus 3, 8, 10, 11. But if I add first, then take magnitude, I'll get 5. So there's a difference, isn't it? If there are a mixture of numbers, positive and negative number, there is a difference. If I take the magnitude first, then add, or if I add, then take magnitude, which is bigger? That is, second one is bigger, isn't it? That means if I take the magnitude, then add, second one is bigger. That means this is a reason. Your equality becomes greater than or equal to, see, sign change. Because I'm taking sum first, then magnitude, then I'm converting it to magnitude first, then sum. So equality becomes greater because of this demonstration. So now I think you can agree to why I wrote like this, why I can write equality as greater than or equal to. Then this is clear. Then let us go to the next step. Next step is what I'm doing is mod of A B. I'm writing as mod A into mod B. This is allowed in maths. You can apply some values and see yourself. You can different combinations you try. This is true. There is mod of AB is equal to mod A into mod B. You put some value, A is equal to -1, B is equal to 2, or A is equal to -1, B is equal to -2, like that you put. They are all equal. That means I'm writing mod of h of k x of n minus k as mod of h of k into h of n minus k. Now I will put the value of x of n. I have already taken x of n to be a finite number, say m. In the place of x, I'm writing some m. Already in the beginning of the derivation only, I bounded the value of x to not greater than m. The maximum value of x can be m. So I'll put the maximum value. What happens if I put the maximum value? So the next expression is, see, already I have taken this in the beginning only, x of n is less than m. Mod of x of n is less than m. That means mod of x of n minus k also is less than m for all values of k and n. That means I'm putting the value of m here. So when I put the value of m here, it is a constant. I can take it outside the summation. No. Once I put x of n minus k is equal to m, the m is a constant. I can take it outside summation. That's what I'm doing here. I'm taking m outside. Now it's the condition. Now this y of n is less than or equal to this product if and only if this summation of h of k modulus is finite. That means this condition which is required for stability, that is y of n is always finite, because m is finite. I know m is finite. Now y of n will be finite, mod of y of n is finite only when the second term, that is summation h of k, its summation, if I add all the values of h, starting from minus to plus infinity, if I add all the values of h, this should be finite. That is, h of k summation should be absolutely summable. It should be a finite sum. So that is a condition for stability. Now this system is stable provided impulse response of the system is absolutely summable. That is, this is what condition I am looking for. Exactly this condition I am looking for. The magnitude of y of n is bounded only if the second term, that is sum of h of mod of h of k, the k ranging from minus to plus infinity, results in a finite sum. Or what is h of k? H of k is impulse response. If impulse response is absolutely summable, this sum doesn't tend to infinity. When I add all the values of h for different values of k, the sum should not become infinite. That is, this sum must converge into a finite value. Then only system is stable. So I hope you understood the condition for stability in terms of impulse response is impulse response must be absolutely summable. It should be a finite series. So same way, this is what I said in the wording. Same thing has been printed here. Just we go through it. A discrete time LTI system is stable only if its impulse response is absolutely summable. Now same thing I can prove for a CT-LTI system. So same way, it's the same step. It is from top to bottom, same step. In the place of summation there is integration, because it is a continuous time system now. Therefore I'm not going to explain this once again. It is a repetition. Please go through this on your own. It is self-explanatory. It's very important question in the exam also. Either this continuous time system or for a discrete time system, you'll be asked to derive for stability condition using impulse response. Please go through both of these, and I'm not going to explain this. In the end, I can tell only this much: a CT system is said to be stable if its impulse response is absolutely integrable. That is, if I integrate like I summate in the previous discrete system, in the continuous system, if I integrate mod of h of tau, then that integration should be finite. That is, it should be integrable. This integration should not tend to infinity. This should not become, if I integrate, it should not become infinity. It should not become infinity. If it becomes infinity, this integration becomes infinity. This is diverging series. Diverging, I mean, the signal h of t is divergent, and therefore system will be unstable. So this integration will converge to a finite value only when h of t function is convergent. That is area under the graph of h of t. That is, if finding integration means finding area of the graph. The total area of the graph under h of tau should be finite. A continuous time LTI system is stable only if its impulse response is absolutely integrable. Absolutely summable in case of discrete time system, absolutely integrable in terms of continuous time system. So what we are concluding, same thing what I described previously, I am concluding here. Just read the sentence once again on your own. You can see a DT system is stable if its impulse response is absolutely summable. This condition always you remember for solving problem. Similarly, a CT system is stable, that is CT LTI system is stable only if impulse response is absolutely integrable. That is this condition. Only then I can tell the given system whether CT or DT are stable. If this condition is not followed, then system is unstable. That's the end of the property on convolution. Stability using impulse response. The last topic remaining, that is finding the unit step response of the LTI system. That is unit step response of a LTI system. So far we discussed about unit impulse response. Now it is unit step response. What is unit step signal? That is, if the input signal is of this form. Suppose if this is the input, that is 1. If this is the input, t is equal to this is the t, this is u of t. If this is the input, for a given system, if this is the input, what is the response? When unit impulse is the unit step input, what is the response? That is called as unit step response. How to find unit step response for a given system using the impulse response. It's a very simple procedure. You can see steps are explained here. It is self-explanatory. Please go through this. Output y of n of a discrete time LTI system is characterized by impulse response h of n with input x of n. This is how I write output of a system using impulse response. This you already know it. I won't explain it again. Now, if the input is unit step, that is x of n is equal to u of n, then the step response is, see, I am using the special notation s of n. S of n stand for step response. See, y of n is the general output. When input, that is in the place of x of n, no, see here, okay, in the place of x of n, if I write u of n, then output is s of n. That is, if x of n is u of n, then output is step response. S stands for step. Okay. Then what is the process? How to find? Using impulse response, using h of n, for a u of n input, what is the response? What is the step response? See, simply use the formula of convolution. See what I do. I am expanding it. Eraser. I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah. See, I simply, this formula is there. No, this formula h of n and convolution u of n. I just expanded it using the convolution formula. Summation k ranging from minus to plus infinity, h of k into u of n minus k. U of n becomes u of n minus k. This signal is flipped. Okay, now, okay, what is u of n minus k? What is u of n minus k? U of n minus k, see, whatever bracket, see, u of n minus k is equal to 1 when my n minus k bracket is greater than or equal to 0 or k less than n. That is, so this is the step signal, no? Step signal, okay. If I delay the step signal by k times, this is k, it is value 1 for n minus k. That is, this is u at n, this is u at n minus k. For n minus k greater than 0, for greater than 0, that is greater than 0, its value is 1. Its value is 1. That is n minus k greater than 0, u of n minus k is 1. That means for k less than n minus k greater than 0 means k less than n, its value is 1. Otherwise, for n minus k less than 0, k is greater than or k greater than n, the value of u of n minus k is 0. Using this condition, I'll change the limits. So what I get is this. That is because for k greater than n, u of n minus k is 0. Therefore, only up to n, starting from minus infinity up to n, if I sum h of k, that is impulse response, then I'll get step response. Therefore, step response is this is called as the running sum. Okay, I should run the sum. I should find the sum of h of k from minus infinity up to n. I have to run the sum up to n. Wherever I want s at any n, I should only run h of k up to n. Then I'll get step response. If I have impulse response, I can get step response simply applying this formula. You substitute h of k here and run it up to n, sum up to n, you'll get s of n. Therefore, step response of a discrete time LTI system is a running sum of impulse response. For a continuous time system, same way I am giving, it is self-explanatory. Please go through this sentence. In the place of summation, there is integration. Same definition holds good here as I did for discrete system. Same definition for the step signal. Then I change the limits. So because for t greater than tau, u of t minus tau is 0, no? Therefore, I am integrating only up to t. Because for t greater than, because tau greater than t, the u of t minus t is 0, no? Therefore, I will limit the integration only up to t. Because for more than that, this value becomes 0, no? For more than, for tau greater than t, this value becomes 0, no? Therefore, the product doesn't exist. Therefore, integration only up to minus to plus infinity becomes minus infinity to t. Because after that, because of this characteristic, it is 0. So before that it is 1. Therefore, I am not writing u of t here because it is value is 1 within this. So that means Step response is the running integral of impulse response. Step response of a CT system is the running integral of impulse response. That's what I am going to show in this. I have shown in this. So see, therefore the step response of a CT system is a running integral of impulse response. That's all I will explain. I have to explain. I wanted to explain in this video. Now, whatever you studied in the first two videos of today's class, no, we'll apply these concepts to solve the problems. So for the problem solution, please come over to the next video. That is, I am stopping here because of the length of the video. It is nearly 35 minutes. So you take a break now, and you can come back to next video where I will start applying all the concepts we studied in the first two videos into problem solutions. So let us go on to the next two videos. I will be making two videos now on the series of problems. Please come back to those videos. For the time being, bye.